you very much. Thank you very much, Kyoko. I'm going to be running out all of the slide set as a video stream rather than sharing a desktop, which is actually part of my response to this challenge that other speakers have been talking about how to deal with teaching in COVID. And as you can see, I've kind of set up a little television studio, which everybody involved in education seems to have built now. So if you want to see the slide set, if you make my camera view full screen, you'll be able to see all of what I'm talking about. So if I switch to the main view and bring up my presentation, what I want to talk.
Sorry, could you put share on, please? If you could share your screen, that would help.
No, if you, I haven't got it set up like that.
Right, okay.
So Zoom won't allow me to run the other software at the same time.
Let me just check that this works. Okay.
Nick,
so
just pin him.
If you just make my my camera view large by clicking on it, you'll be able to see everything overlaid, and I'll just send it out as one stream.
If I just tell everyone how to do that, basically on Zoom you can pin. If you go to the three dots at the top right of Dan's image, you'll see that one of the options under there is to pin, add pin, and then you can actually make him full screen. Apologies, I just want to make that clear. That's
if you double click on the image, it should make it full screen, and then you have options to be able to see other participants if you would like. And this is one of the COVID challenges of running Teams and Zoom and Blackboard in so many different environments that they all want to work in different ways. And everybody going, can you see my slide set? So hopefully you can see the slide set with me overlaid on the background. What I want to talk about is a project that's been running for a couple of years called Art as Dataset, Dataset as Art, talking about machine vision systems, which links into some presentations, fantastic presentations we had yesterday, looking at starting to use artificial intelligence and computer vision and machine vision to recognize objects. And I want to talk about this idea of recognizing objects, specifically in the context of artistic process. And the process of artists speaking to an audience by illustrating meaning, underlying bodies of work is very, very common. Artists will often go out and repeatedly draw or sketch or create around a subject that they're interested in to discover in a non-verbal way what they're interested in and find ways non-verbally to communicate that to audiences. And when we move into this age of mechanical reproduction, we can, as artists or creative people, build coherent sets of visual materials very fast as a means of non-verbal investigation, especially in the computational arts field. But one of the interesting things is some of the things that Flusser talks about when he talks about the meaning in photographs being fundamentally different than paintings, in that the meaning is often buried in what he refers to as technical images. And artists assemble bodies of work as collections or visual materials in multiples, in visual essays or series. And this allows the artist to illustrate through type and repetition and focus and observation that thing which is important in the pattern of things to an audience. And if you were to take, for instance, Warhol's flower series, what we see is that he's not per se talking about flowers nor interested in flowers, that there's something beneath that level that's going on that he wants to communicate to the audience, and he's illustrating it by finding multiple instances of this thing, this intangible thing, as the type. And the Japanese photographer Masahisa Fukase, in the book Ravens, or Solitude of Ravens, or Kurusu, which he produced over a number of years, the British Journal of Photography called the best photo book of the last 25 years, and is critically acclaimed around the world, and is pictures of ravens predominantly, but it's not about ravens. Audubon says it's a seminal series on loss and solitude channeled through Corvids, and it's an avant-garde work of self-reflection. But the audience has shown repetitions of images that have a meaning that correlates together And this process assists audiences to see what relates to what between items in a body of work in a non-verbal, visual, semantic, or cognitive way. And this relation of pattern or similarity and defining unspoken meaning with exemplar work is the foundation of how computer vision systems understand and classify the world. I use understand in very, very much inverted commas, in that there's not per se understanding in the way that we would think of it as human, but there is certainly cognition or recognition or classification of a kind going on. And this classification comes from human trainers, assembling materials as data sets and ascribing meaning to them in an ontological way, to say, this is how we're going to classify the world, this is how we're going to categorize the world, and this is what relates to what in generating meaning. And what we're doing is we're hoping to train the audience to see what the artist sees, to have an insight, to see a different perspective, to see the world with a particular ontology or a particular set of meaning underneath it. And as Karen Barad notes, it's got to be remembered, and this is a difficult one sometimes, is that objects don't have names. Names have objects. And the classification, the ontology, and the structure of what we believe is the meaning of the world is applied and generated by humans to try to make sense of the world. And it isn't actually how the world is. In the paper, I described the process of creating a data set for machine learning from a photographic collection. And the photographic materials were generated as part of a project of nonverbal investigation that I found myself undertaking. And the source materials, these photographs, were used for a couple of different aspects of exploring an idea. And at the end, they've produced a data set for machine vision learning, for training computer vision systems, that's become an artwork in its own right. And this led me through a series of discussions and realizations and connections that other artists and philosophers and technologists were talking about. The project was called Signs of Surveillance, and it was a photographic social mapping project, and out of it came a book and a print exhibition and an interactive installation, and now a machine vision set for training computer systems. And it was finding signs to show surveillance, these warning CCTV signs in their thousands around the world. And I started mapping these because I had geolocated data inside all the photographs, and I could place them, and I could follow the walks that I'd undertaken through. And part of the project produced a data set that was an interactive map of all of the signs that I'd found around the world that other people could contribute to. And you could travel around to go to see across the world where I traveled, where these where these signs were. And this is a short video from the live web-based map that you can go and interrogate, or you can fly around from point to point, as we have a video of here. And each of these signs start to become part of a larger pattern. And from that pattern, I produced a corpus of about 2,000 images that have been taken from around the world, and each one's time and date and location tagged and divided by country. And out of this, realizing that I had a data set that had a specific point of view about how to view the world, in that I could be walking around a shopping center. And one of the things that I started noticing was how much surveillance there was, particularly in the UK. And it changed how I saw the world. And the specific point that came out of this is that if we're going to use computer vision increasingly, as we're seeing, automated, the data sets that are used to train it, and that point of view becomes very important. And the data sets that are used to train machine vision systems, and of which some of the speakers yesterday were using, are coming from particular sources. And there have been a number of different issues discussed sort of in technology press, in arts press, in cultural heritage press, about where these data sets come from and the use of them, both positive and negative, and with some significant drawbacks in some places. And the idea of artists generating data sets as a means of sort of resistance or an alternative to the commercial industrial complex producing data sets was something I was very excited about and very interested in. Now, as Dunn and Raby talk about in their critical design FAQ, Dunn and Raby talked about design being one of two things. Design either agrees with the current worldview and is, in their description, affirmative design, or it's design that challenges the status quo, that asks questions of the status quo, and is what they call critical. And I was wondering about whether it's possible to produce critical data sets for training machine learning systems. And from this, the science surveillance data set was produced explicitly to be able to train surveillance systems that are using machine vision to locate surveillance systems that are using machine vision by actually tracking what we can see visibly of them, which is these signs warning the public that we're under surveillance. So in this sense, it's a critical data set. And the idea that pins this is something that's come through the engagement with artists and technology, which is about being able to have access to the means of production. From the 1950s of artists starting to co-opt electronic and computational systems through to digital systems of being able to edit audio and video, and more recently now being able to edit high quality television quality material, be able to generate immersive experiences, and to be able to distribute them. We are accessing the means of production. And the idea that artists and designers and individuals can generate data sets that are pieces of work in themselves, that are from a specific person's viewpoint, allows us to enter into this discussion of how the new world is classified, the AI world is classified. And I would argue that this is part of seizing the means of surveillance. At scienceofsurveillance.com, you can go and download this data set, and it's already installed in Runway ML, which you can find at runwayml.com, which is very, very easy access to use machine learning and machine vision systems that are based in the web. And the data set's about 48 meg. It has nearly 2,000 images categorized by country that are all prepared and is available with a Creative Commons license for use in non-commercial projects. You can download this freely, and you can find it at scienceofsurveillance.com, and you can go to runwayml.com and also find pre-trained models that you can then run through things like YOLO, You Only Look Once, or Darknet machine vision systems that will be able to classify these science of surveillance and hopefully see the world in a slightly different way. Thank you very much.
Dan.